One of the first conversations I did for this project was with 4 of the 85ers. Don't panic, everybody. You're being recorded. It
Oh
is
my
best not to
God.
panic. You guys can go around the horn, easy breezy.
I was gonna say, who's the horn?
Oh, Henry. Go for it.
This was Michelle Akers, Ruth Harker, Lori Henry, and Linda Ganzitano. And I gathered them because I wanted them to try and jog each other's memories of something we discussed in episodes 4 and 5.
So my Oosa experience, the first Oosa was, holy shit, they're booing us right now.
We're like, what do they say? They booing us? And she's like, no, they're saying USA, USA.
It was like Oosa, Oosa, Oosa. The whole crowd was cheering for us. So it was like goosebumps.
What began as a misunderstanding became a rallying cry.
And by the next game we played, we said, let's use that as our cheer.
It wasn't just Oosa, Oosa, Oosa. It was Oosa, Oosa, Oosa. Oh, like, ugh. I know what it means to me. It means we're kicking the shit out of you. You should just go home now.
It had to be our cheer, because it just was such a natural, iconic moment.
I wanted to come back to this moment, this cheer, in our final chapter, because we can't tell the story of this team without talking about what happened to that cheer. It's probably not surprising when I tell you that they used the same cheer for their third and fourth games in Italy, as well as when they returned the following summer to play in their second Mundialito.
We had other training camps in 86, 87, and a lot of the same players, including new players. And then the Oosa, Oosa, Oosa just became part of the tradition, as part of what we do.
You might not even be that surprised to hear Michelle say that it continued into 1987, and then 1988, 1989.
Inner scrimmages and friendlies, and every game it was Oosa, Oosa, Oosa.
What is surprising is that as the years went along, so did Oosa, becoming a key part of the culture and tradition of the U.S. women's national team.
From then on, it was just what we did. It was like wearing USA on our shirt. This is our cheer.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Oosa is the connective tissue uniting generations of players for the last 40 years.
I mean, you have to do it in the huddle before the pregame. Like, there's no not doing it. You always do it.
It just felt unifying. It just felt like you were part of something bigger than just yourself. I was really young, but I was like, okay, I like that. I like that ring.
The to me is everything, because it's like, from the soul, Oosa, 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 That's what we used to say.
There you heard Becky Sauerbrunn, Say Meza, and Julie Foudy. And while the Oosa cheer is iconic, it's just part of the 85ers' legacy.
The United States has won the Women's World Cup!
The U.S. women's national team has won 4 World Cups and 5 Olympic gold medals, and is one of the most dominant teams in modern sports. Yet the team that laid the foundation for this success has yet to be recognized.
I've had to fight for every single thing that we have received.
I do think that pioneers often get missed in the story. So when are we going to acknowledge the 85ers?
It's been a constant fight for the last 40 years. I mean, they deserve to be recognized for what they built and how their efforts shaped the future of women's soccer.
And women's sports altogether, and that legacy needs to be celebrated.
Well, Jane, that's what we're here to do. I'm Erin Foley.
And I'm Jane McManus.
And from Storied Sports and Adidas, this is Origin Story, the 85ers. Episode 7, Oosa Forever. So Jane, picking up where we left off, in 1986, the U.S. women's national team had a new coach, new questions, and the same old uncertainty about whether U.S. soccer was actually willing to invest in what these women had started.
What did carry over from Italy was something else entirely, a refusal to accept the status quo. And Ruth Harker told us about how what happened in 1985 fueled the players as they prepared to return to the Mundialito Cup the next year.
One of the great things that came out of that is the next generation, these people that hadn't aged out, were ferociously wanting redemption from that. And I think that's how the dynasty started, was I don't want to feel that way again. Every single one of those women wanted that trajectory to change. They wanted the U.S. to invest in women. The greatest thing that came out of that is the grit that came next, because no one wants to lose, because you got that big loser on your forehead after that.
It's yet another example of how the spirit of the 85ers was immediately infused into the culture of this team as the American women reached the final of the Mundialito in 1986. And opportunities for other tournaments arose throughout the rest of the decade. But by 1991, Michelle Akers and Lori Henry were the only two 85ers still on the U.S. women's national team, a team now coached by Anson Dorrance. And that year, FIFA finally staged the first ever Women's World Cup.
What we had gathered on that roster for the World Cup in 1991 were an extraordinary collection of players that believed in competing like hell. I don't think we were the most technical team in the world. I don't think we were the most tactical. I think we were probably the most athletic team in the world, and if we weren't, close to being the most athletic. I didn't want to let the country down. So for me, when we won, I was not filled with joy. I was just filled with relief that on my watch we didn't lose.
The USA World Champions!
But as Michelle told us, even with a World Cup title in hand, the conditions hadn't caught up. Support, investment, and basic recognition were still frustratingly out of reach.
It seems like, oh, wow, it really grew by leaps and bounds. It did, but it didn't. We still were only paid $10 a day. We wore men's uniforms. We had short training camps and preparations for these tournaments. Even for World Cup, we had horrible travel conditions, living conditions, hardly any media. Even though we won that first World Cup and we are the first world champions for the USA, it still wasn't celebrated. It should have been parades, come on. The point is that we won anyway. And that is what the US team does. That tournament was everything. And if we didn't win, we wouldn't have had anything after that. So that was part of the mission. But also it was just putting on your uniform and playing for your country and playing for each other and with each other.
And that's exactly what they did. They kept showing up for each other. And that bond carried the team to Olympic gold in 1996, and then to another World Cup in 1999. And the victory in 99 didn't just change women's soccer, it changed the landscape for women's sports. And then fast forward 20 years, when the national team won the World Cup for the fourth time, they got a parade in New York City's Canyon of Heroes. And yet, for all the national team's success over the years, the 85ers, the team that started it all, were largely forgotten. But forgotten amongst the fans and the public doesn't always mean forgotten by the players. So I asked several of them what was collectively understood about the team's origin story.
I think it's great you're doing this because a lot of people don't even have any clue that, the U.S. women's national team started before 1999 even, right? It's like, oh, there's a U.S. women's national team? I saw Brandy take her top off. Is that when it started? Yep.
And there wasn't a whole lot about the past before the 90s. And I think that's because the 99 team, that was such a inflection point. And so I feel like that kind of just took all the attention.
Do you think like most former or current players really know the story of the 85ers?
No, I don't think so. Not to blame anyone. I don't think this age group probably doesn't realize there was so much more before them in any sport that they're a part of.
My conversations with Foudy, Sauerbrunn, and Christine Lilly confirmed how little was known. And for an original player like Michelle Akers, it's been hard to watch the history fade.
For me, 91 World Cup and every big tournament afterwards was like, I fucking know where I came from. And the 85 team is where it started. And I was the only player who knew that, who felt it, who carried the scars from it. It's part of the tragedy of that 85 team. Like, I want that to change for that team. because they need to know who they are and what they did, because it's never been recognized.
And it wasn't just Akers who felt this way, Jane. I know you spoke about this with Lori Henry when we were at the event in Seattle.
I was able to kind of buttonhole her and have a little conversation. And she told me a story about being behind the bench in 1999 to see that team in the Rose Bowl win the gold in the World Cup. And she was there because they'd invited members of the 1991 World Cup winning team to be there and to witness it. And she said she was so happy in the moment that they won the 99 World Cup. She was so happy to be there and celebrate. But she felt like all of her 85ers should have been there too.
Are you trying to make me cry?
That is the whole point of today.
For Michelle, a burning drive to correct the historical record shows up on and off the field. It's in her DNA.
I've had to fight for every single thing that we have received while also winning everything that we were a part of. So I think, what would that have been like if we could have just shown up and played soccer? Oh my God, that would have been amazing. Every single thing that you see as being a reality for women's soccer and women today was intentional discussions and choices and a willingness to say it needs to be better and more. It's not good enough.
That is how that time was. It's like you had to breathe yourself into existence because they weren't going to. And you had to constantly like rattle the cage, like shake it and be like, yo, we're here.
When we talked to Becky Sauerbrunn about this, she reminded us that the advocacy is also part of the national team DNA, and so was looking for allies from the outside. When they were in the middle of pushing U.S. soccer for equal pay, they got a big assist from a longtime sponsor.
It's just kind of this symbiotic relationship where we were just kind of helping each other. And I remember really distinctly, like in 2019, Adidas coming out with the announcement that like, hey, if the women's national team wins the World Cup, we are going to pay them the equal money that we would have paid any of our men's players had they won the World Cup.
Later in 2022, the U.S. men's team agreed to renegotiate their own contracts so that the women's team could finally achieve equal pay, another point for allyship. The fight for equal treatment has been a slow process, but for the 85ers, the fight for recognition has progressed even slower. On the U.S. Soccer website, there is a historical timeline of every notable moment in the history of the men's and women's teams. And a few years ago, Michelle spotted something.
When you look at the timeline, the U.S. soccer timeline, and it goes all the way back into like 1930 or something. I'm looking, where's my 1985 team? And the only thing on there is like a statement about a men's league. And my team is not on there.
So earlier this year, I looked at an archived version of the timeline on the U.S. Soccer website. And let me read to you what it said about 1985. Quote, the NASL and USL ceased operations. That's it.
I took a look at that and the whole vibe was just like, men nearly qualify for CONCACAF with 0-0 tie with Mexico. Also, women win the Olympics.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the Olympics, right? It's like not a big deal, but a tie. Oh, let's cover that.
It just was so distressing. And over the years, it just was like a pebble in my shoe. And then it was like a thorn. And then it was like every time I saw it, it just was more and more disappointing. And also it just made me so mad. I took pictures of it. I seethed over it. It just is not understandable. Why?
So the 85ers had to take matters into their own hands.
To have to write a letter to U.S. Soccer, to have an attorney write a letter to U.S. Soccer and say, put the 85ers in, we got a ways to go. We got a ways to go.
Earlier this year, U.S. Soccer finally updated their official timeline to include the following. The United States fielded its first women's national team at a tournament in Jesolo, Italy. The Italian fans greeted the U.S. women with an Oosa chant that the U.S. women's national team adopted and is in use in present day.
Such fluidity in the language on the timeline. It's pure poetry.
Yeah, I feel like they really, really took their time. Another striking omission is the absence of the 85ers from the National Soccer Hall of Fame due to an eligibility rule. This prompted Brenda Elsey, the soccer historian and professor at Hofstra University, who we met earlier in the series, to write a letter advocating for their inclusion. She argues there's been a double standard.
How many, again, players on the men's side and the women's side in the Hall of Fame?
Well, the last I checked, and I think this was as of 2024, was 149 men and 22 women.
And how many World Cups have the men won versus how many the women have won?
You're so mean. You know the barriers were there structurally and informally, formally and informally. And then you've made exceptions for all these men. And there's all these women who have done it in spite of those, which is like harder. So the bar is higher. They've surpassed it and they still haven't done enough. Yeah, that's frustrating to me as an historian.
What they are really trying to do is to make sure that their place in the history of American women's soccer is codified.
Yeah.
They want to be on the timeline. You know, they want to have their part in this pageant recognized. And, you know, unfortunately, it hasn't been that way, you know, because they came about like before some of these systems were in place. They are seen as outside the system, even though they generated the very first women's team to play international soccer on behalf of the United States. They should take their rightful place in the pantheon of all of those great American women's teams and for the roles that they've played and the eras that they played in.
But to do that, they need systemic support, which Megan Burke, executive director of the NWSL Players Association, spelled out for us.
My view on U.S. soccer is that if they're serious, and I think they are, I actually do think their leadership is, whether the entire organization is probably a different question. But if they're serious about reckoning with their own history, they need to remove the artificial barriers they created to the origin story of this wild success happening in the first place.
Time for a quick word from our presenting sponsor, Adidas.
In 1985, these players unknowingly sparked a revolution. In 2025, they're finally reclaiming their story, and Adidas is here again, just like before. Origin Story Season 1, The 85ers, presented by Adidas. So what does it take to gain recognition? Well, one thing I've come to understand about these kinds of things, these efforts to give credit to people who have been long overlooked, is that a momentum begins to build. And while Michelle and all the other players were doing everything they could to tell people about this history, you typically need a spark. And you never know where it's going to come from, but in this case, the spark started with Stacey Enos.
So in 2007, the 1986 team was invited to Mia Hamm and Falvey's induction ceremony. And we got a certificate that said establishing winning traditions. And I asked a few folks, like, so when are we going to acknowledge the 85ers?
Today, Stacey is the director of operations at the Asheville City Soccer Club in North Carolina.
Over a beer and with my general manager listening to me for a few years, Tim Bleckicke in Asheville City Soccer Club, he goes, I have a surprise for you. And I go, what? And I couldn't believe it. And he goes, look, this is going to be our commemorative jersey that we're going to wear, the 85ers. And it's a replica. I burst into tears. I was like, oh my God, it was such a cool idea. And he's like, do you think if you could find all the 85ers and send them the shirt and just ask them to take a photo and a video? And so that began this quest.
When Stacey began organizing the reunion in Asheville, it became a full-on scavenger hunt. Facebook messages, word of mouth, chasing down leads. A lot of the women had married and changed their names, and some hadn't even seen each other in 38 years.
And then what started to happen is people said, well, when are you going to do this game? What if I come? And that kind of opened this other door.
As Stacy and her staff connected with more 85ers and shared the news that the team would be honored before the game, everyone wanted to be there.
It all started back up when Stacy Enos invited us to Asheville. We were like little kids again. I mean, I walk into the hotel and I see Ruth and I see a couple others and Em and others, and no time had passed. Immediately, we were teammates giving each other a hard time and laughing about old stories, and just felt so heartfelt to be with them again.
The event in Asheville was the initial spark, and it raised the profile of the 85ers amongst many people in the soccer world. And in 2024, Kansas City's NWSL team, the Current, elected to pick up the torch. Not only did they honor the players at their season opener, but in the concourse of their brand new stadium, they installed an exhibit about the 85ers featuring amazing portraits of all 17 women. And just the existence of the display became another link in the chain.
You know, I had the opportunity to be at Kansas City at the stadium a couple times last year. It was right before we played there.
That's Maya Mendoza-Ekstrom, the chief operating officer of the Seattle Reign FC, who saw Kansas City's display of player portraits by photographer Randy Bacon.
That photo journal essay wall is spectacular. I hope that the 85ers all know that they're the badass, beautiful queens that they are portrayed there. I think for me, it rang a little bit hollow because I knew the Seattle story and I was so frustrated maybe, or like, shoot, this placemaking effort is awesome, but we might be able to do more.
Maya's extremely well-versed in the history of soccer in Seattle. When we spoke to her, she knew all about Mike Ryan and Bernadette Noonan and the fact that 8 of the first 17 national team players were from Seattle. And she realized if the folks in Kansas City are honoring these players, why aren't we doing that, considering so many of them were from the area? So she knew it was time to pitch her colleagues.
I was like, well, you all know that Seattle was the birthplace of U.S. women's national team. And they're like, what? And I was saying it sort of tongue-in-cheek to my colleagues. And I was like, well, yeah, like, the 1985ers. I'm like, those women that were the very first. And they're like, what are you talking about? So we had these great conversations early on. And part of it was just a recognition that the roots of Seattle soccer and women's soccer in Seattle go deeper than the start of the NWSL.
Maya ended up inviting all of the 85ers from Seattle to attend Megan Rapinoe's jersey retirement in 2024. And that day, the conversations turned to the team's upcoming milestone.
And they said, our 40th anniversary is next year. And I was like, oh, you know what? I didn't even do that math. And it's August 18th. And I'm like, great, we're in. And then I reached out to them again and said, you'll never believe it. We actually can play on the actual anniversary. Are you guys in?
It was a thrilling opportunity for the 85ers. But in the lead up to it, Michelle knew there was a lot to organize.
First of all, that whole weekend in Seattle, anticipating that the year before and all the planning and dreaming and phone calls, it just so actually getting on the plane, I was like, oh my God, it's really happening. It's really happening. There's like excitement. And then there's also like, God help us. Like, I know it's going to be awesome because of the partners we're working with, but God help us. It's just let everything work. So it was like all this anticipation. It was worse than a World Cup, going to a World Cup, let me just say.
Why was it worse than a World Cup?
Because a World Cup is so much easier than planning legacy events and trying to rewrite history in the correct way and like fulfilling the dreams on a much higher level. As a player winning a World Cup, you're like, you have your job and you go and you play and kick ass. And then that's so much easier than all the other things. So it was like, once I got on that plane, I was like, okay, just watch the movies, Michelle.
2 days before the match at Star Lake Elementary, the 85ers stood on a newly dedicated mini pitch, their name painted right on the field, with kids running all around them.
Then all these kids started showing up. We had like 10 balls on this little field, and then my team is so competitive. So the kids are trying to play, and like Denise Boyer is almost like taking out the But we didn't do that, obviously, but there was like an intensity about it and the kids were loving it. And I was like standing in the middle of this mini pitch, watching and laughing and going, God, really, people don't change that much. And this is why we have so much fun. And then one little kid was in the goal and she was like, shoot on me, shoot on me. So then I was taking shots and a couple others were taking shots. And Denise Boyer, again, who's like, 4 foot nothing, she's just like railing shots in on the little kid. So all of that was, and the kid was loving it.
What do you think it meant for the kids?
Who are these old ladies running? What are they doing? Why are they here? But then we were like bringing it. We were bringing the game to them. And so they're like, oh.
Then, on Monday, August 18th, the big day had finally arrived. And at halftime of the Reigns match against the Chicago Stars, the 85ers were brought onto the field.
Like the first time we came out of the tunnel, these young girls are holding posters and they had 1985 U.S. Women's National Team and they're asking you to sign it. And I don't know, I just hadn't seen it written out.
In 1985, a group of women, many from right here in Seattle, stepped onto the field. No fanfare, no contracts.
The posters, the crowd, the people, everybody was 100% behind us. And it was so uplifting. It was all very powerful and emotional, incredibly emotional.
You just take it all in. You just take it all in. And you see the other ladies, the other teammates on the stage with us, and the smiles and the joy. Yeah, you don't forget those moments. I could cry now, it's just, you just don't forget those moments, that's all. They stay with you.
They had a big podium brought out on the field to call people's names and you'd come up and the crowd would cheer. And so I was the last one. There's always this like special charge that is felt from the crowd to the player or the person. Like I have always felt like the crowd it's like alive. The electricity is plugged in and we're all together. So that as a player was part of every game that I played, a part I loved. I was just thinking more about, oh my gosh, this has taken 40 years.
Michelle took it all in for a moment, and as she went to return to her spot on the stage, Leslie Gallimore, the GM of the Reign, stopped her.
Gallimore's like, oh, Akers, no, come back, you're giving a speech. And I was like, I am? So I was standing there and having this microphone put in front of me and give a speech. How do you say in a surprise announcement that you're giving a speech with all this emotion? What are the words that has such importance? I did what I did on the field. I just looked at everybody in the stadium that was looking at us, and I looked at my team, and then I was like, I love you, Seattle. I love my team.
Stacey Enos and Kathy Williams were in awe of the moment as well.
I mean, I didn't want to leave the stage. I just kind of wanted to just stand on the podium and soak it all in.
How did that make you feel?
Like, it was reminiscent. I really tried to think about Italy and being there and just having this opportunity to be on a field in front of a crowd. And when you just step up and just have that acknowledgement come back to you, I really just wanted to just stand there and soak it all in and say thank you because it was incredibly meaningful. I felt like I was having my moment. It was acknowledged and I was being recognized with my teammates by my side that we were and are part of the U.S. women's national team. It's the moment I have been wanting and waiting for a really long time.
I don't think there's really words for it for us because we didn't have any of that, right? Ever back in the day. We didn't have any of that. And so being in front of a crowd, especially my friends and family, you know, I'm married, right? But he didn't know me when this was all happening, right? So my kids weren't around when this was all happening. So just my family that had been there when I was 10 and 12 and 14 and knew how crazy I was about soccer and watched sort of everything happen. Having them there and being so proud, it was incredible moment.
It was like so joyful. All their faces were just like lit up the entire stadium. Standing up, everybody is standing up in the crowd, giving them a standing ovation as they come off the field. Listen to the crowd.
I hear my name, and I turn around, and it's this little goalkeeper. And she goes, "Can you just sign one more sheet of paper for me?" And I said, "Well, what about the shirt?" And she started to cry. And so did her dad. And we touched fingers like this all the way till we separated. It was fantastic to see that connection and a beautiful thing. We're taking this team and we're connecting this team to the younger generation means that that story will never be lost. And I think that's super important.
But it wasn't just about connecting with younger generations. It was also about reconnecting with each other.
They had 3 days to make a team, but they've had 40 years to become a family. And that's what we saw in Seattle.
And that family bond was especially clear when it came to Sharon McMurtry, who unfortunately wasn't able to make the trip.
Even before they went, they said they'd take me with them in spirit. And I was there. I was watching my phone, hoping for videos, pictures, anything, any communication. They did send me very quickly, like a video of Lori and Ann holding up my jersey and Kim's jersey, saying they were taking us out on the field. And it was so cool because they took me with them. And it was such a heartfelt thing because I love that team. They're such cool people. It was really neat, really, really neat. And I felt a part of the team. There's nothing like being a part of the team.
Sharon, I'm going down. I'm going to start crying in 2 seconds.
Sorry, I'm sorry. I'm losing it.
Oh my God, that's so sweet.
I don't know where that came from, Erin. It's maybe it's always been there, but being a part of a team is something very, very special.
It's been really special spending the last year getting to know these women and learning their story. But honestly, the coolest part was being there in Seattle, getting to see them finally get their due.
And that's really why we wanted to do this series in the first place, to help make sure these players are recognized and that people actually know their story.
It's also very important for current players to know the history of their team. That's something Emily Sams and Lindsay Heaps can vouch for.
Since I've joined, there's been a huge emphasis on like standing on the shoulders of the people before you. And it was really cool because my first camp was the Olympics. And so Emma brought in all the 99ers and we had a dinner where they talked about, you know, what advice they would give to us and things like that.
We're doing a really good job of celebrating, you know, the teams prior and bringing, you know, the 85ers to certain events and celebrating them at games and et cetera, and being able to like be around them. When we've spoken to them too, they were just so honored to be representing the badge and to be representing our national team.
Emma Hayes, the current coach of the national team, has even had some of the 85ers in to discuss the history.
Michelle Akers is talking about what it is, what the team meant, what it is to represent the crest, and that foundation has lived on in the generations. And they talk about it all the time. It's passed on. This whole passing on of the jersey is It's in the walls of the US women's national team. It's like nothing I've ever seen before.
Sam Meza, a player on the Seattle Reign who we heard from earlier, was on the field during the 85ers' 40th anniversary ceremony. And she explained what it was like to see them in person for the first time.
It's kind of like a little kid seeing like super famous people, and you're just kind of like watching them walk by and you're like, wow, like you guys are sick. Just idolizing them from a distance, right, as they're passing is just kind of like, wow, you guys are amazing.
So then later, when I was interviewing Linda Ganzitano, I told her about this really cool moment. She said when they came out on the field and saw you guys, she was like, you know, it's like when you're younger and you see a celebrity and you're like, oh my God.
I just got goosebumps and I want to cry again, you know? That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that one.
But of course, this has impacted players from every generation. Becky Sauerbrunn, who started with the team in 2008 and retired just last year, saw the contrasts between her experience and that of the 85ers.
I always kind of at least knew that there was another level that I could aspire to. And so I think that is a big difference between my pathway and what the 85ers had to go through, where it was all or nothing. You're either on the team or you're going back to JCPenney. I think that makes a big difference in like how you want to pursue your sport.
Christine Lilly, one of the greatest players of all time, made a similar comparison.
Yeah, the 99ers that everyone knows we won and then changed soccer in America, but the 85ers started soccer. So what was that like for the beginning? They weren't getting anything. They were playing for the love of the game, and they started it.
Another 99er, Julie Foudy, puts the 85ers in the same category as some of the greatest pioneers in women's sports.
It is like this full circle moment because so much of what I love about this team is the sisterhood and the taking care of each other and recognizing that we're going to leave it better for the next gen coming through. And so they are our forever first gen, as Billie Jean King calls them, the first generation to come through, the pioneers. They laid the foundation of what this team is.
Time for a quick word from our presenting sponsor, Adidas.
Did you know that Adidas gave the 85ers cleats and jerseys in Long Island? Yeah, that's sort of, yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
That's my brand.
Presented by Storied Sports and Adidas. This is Origin Story, the 85ers.
So now at this point, Jane, I just want to get out of the way for a moment and leave room for some of these amazing players to share what this 40-year journey has meant to them.
We built this team and we built this culture of the women's national team on the shoulders and the DNA of these 17 players. There was this culture of just grittiness and get it done, and we're good, and we're not going to lose, and we're not going to let this deter us. And that culture still resonates today with the U.S. women's national team. And it was built really by us, the 17 players on that team.
What do you want people to know about the 85ers?
That they made a difference, that it started a dynasty, and that, you know, it had to start somewhere, right?
Every single time I hear the national anthem, and I'm a teacher, every time I say the Pledge of Allegiance with my class every day, it hits me about how special not very many people in the world, in our country, get that opportunity to do that. And I just appreciate it.
The game, it's our lives, you know, like I have never stopped living the dream. I carry that dream every time I watch the U.S. team play. Like I'm in it, I'm on the field with them, I'm there, I'm proud, I represent my country, I represent my sisters who are on the field. Those are the moments.
Somebody called us pioneers. And the thing is, yes, we were the pioneer national team, but we didn't chop down the jungle and build the on-ramp to the freeway. We were preceded by women that had a lot of guts and determination to play. Our legacy is their legacy as well because they made it happen.
Erin.
Yes.
You said you wanted to come back to Oosa. Why is that?
Well, to me, the Oosa story, it just kept building. It's building in the series. It's culminating right now. What a beautiful full circle moment. This is the thread that has held all these teams together for 40 years.
It's literally stitched together from the Fields and Jesselo and the friends they made along the way and the cappuccinos they drank and the bus rides and getting lost and all of this through Christine Lilly, through Julie Foudy, through 1999, up into the players that we have today.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
The first time I remember doing it was I got called into my first youth national team camp. A lot of the players had been there before, and so they all like knew what they were doing, and I was like, all right, like just follow what everyone else is doing.
I think when I first heard the Oosa chant, it was the first game of the tournament that I'd heard it, and I hadn't heard it prior, but I was like, oh, it's catchy.
It felt like just like stepping into like something bigger than me. It was super special, and just like thinking about all of the people who have done that before and how it's just like a tradition for the national team was really special.
But like, how cool is it that it's stuck with our national team since that moment?
It stuck because the 85ers made sure it did, and its power reached far beyond how it all began.
We did have to explain it to people because they didn't know, they hadn't heard. And we had to tell the story over and over again, and it became folklore. And then they get to tell the story over and over again. And they're part of this, original story, which is great. So yeah, not everybody knows it, and that's all right, but we're going to teach it to them and what it means to be on the team.
It's so cool, and I cry when I just know that that's still the cheer, and that it's been passed down through the years. We're the beginning. There was a beginning, from paper teams to 85ers and so forth. So I think that's very cool that some little punk hasn't come in and said, let's do this instead. You know what I mean? Like it means something. We thank the Italians for that.
It wasn't something that I even knew was happening until probably the last 3 or 4 years when we started to attend some of the games and we were invited down to the field. And all of a sudden I hear Oosa, Oosa, Oosa at the start of the game. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're using this. I did not know this was being carried through 40 years later. And then it became so important. Like a heartfelt moment that was, this is happening. And it started with us.
For the 85ers to hear modern day players saying their chant, their cheer that they started, given that they have not been celebrated and have not been recognized, that's them. Every time they say that cheer, it's a part of them.
It is.
God damn it.
Gotcha.
I knew it was going to hit me. And sometimes when the emotions take over and you can't find the words, it's best to hand it off to Abby Wambach.
What an incredible gift they gave us. I am certain that there are even many more women that had a big part in creating what we now know women's soccer to be. I am certain that these are women we will never maybe know the names of. And I am certain that they are just as important and played just as important role that I played. That is the epitome of what women's sport is. It is a group of women who have decided collectively that they are going to make sure somehow, some way, that they are going to leave this sport a little bit better than when they found it.
Origin Story, The 85ers is produced by Storied Sports and presented by Adidas. It was reported, written, and produced by me, Erin Foley, along with Jane McManus, Ryan Nantel, and Marissa McBride. Our editor is Deanna Hong, and she had additional help from Jason Smith. Post audio is by Jason Powell. Music supervision by Maddie Phillips. Jamie Messler, Laura Gentili, and Michelle Akers are executive producers.
A big special thanks to Jamie Middleman and to our intern, Andrew Rodriguez, who provided additional research. For more information on all the voices you heard in this episode, take a look at our show notes. There you can also find a link to all of our episodes. Thanks for listening.
You're welcome, Carol. No funding, no spotlight, just raw talent and Adidas on their backs. 40 years later, the women who built the game finally get the mic. Origin Story Season 1, The 85ers, presented by Adidas.